it's me. I'm back again, day 2 of my video series, helping you get started and learn the most important things about clearing your clutter. Now, yesterday we talked about how your home is like a conveyor belt. Things come into your home and onto the conveyor belt. They travel along the conveyor belt and stay on the conveyor belt. And ultimately things, hopefully at some point, come off the conveyor belt at the clutter clearing end and come out of that front door again. We have a build-up of clutter in our home because there are things that stay on the conveyor belt and don't actually come off the conveyor belt. And because there are more things coming onto the conveyor belt than coming off, the volume on the conveyor belt increases. It doesn't matter how big your home is. Some people say to me, oh, but I just need a bigger home. I need to move to a bigger home. That is not the problem. The problem is that we need to accept how big our conveyor belt is. It doesn't matter whether you live in a 1-bed flat or a 6-bedroom mansion. Your clutter will still grow on that conveyor belt if there is more coming on than coming off. I have worked with clients who have lived in studio flats or bedsits, and clients who have lived in mansions. A couple of celebrities in there as well. And again, the principle is exactly the same. They're not accepting how much space they actually have, and we have to choose between, do we want the stuff or do we want the space? If we want the space, then we need to clear some clutter off that conveyor belt, out of that front door, and we need to reduce the amount of potential clutter coming into our home or onto the conveyor belt. Okay, so today I just want to touch upon one of the most common questions that I have, because when people reach a point where they want to clear their clutter, they're ready to clear their clutter, they want to get the advice they need to clear their clutter. Very often it's a matter of they want to do it really quick. That's why we've tried the blitzes in the past, because we think if I just focus on it, I'll spend all day or maybe all weekend just blitzing the clutter, get as much as I can off that conveyor belt, then I'll be okay and I'll be able to manage it. And of course we know, because of the accumulation area, that's not going to solve the clutter problem for very long. But we do have that sense of impatience, don't we? When we're finally ready to admit that the clutter needs dealing with and we are ready to do what needs to be done. So there are a few things that you need to know and understand about how long it will take you to clear all of this clutter that has accumulated on your conveyor belt. Okay, so the first thing is that it will depend on how many rooms or areas you've got that are cluttered. Sounds fairly obvious. So again, if you've got a 1-bedroom flat, there'll only be 1 bedroom plus maybe a lounge, living room, kitchen, bathroom, maybe a hallway. Whereas if you've got a 6-bedroomed house, you're likely to have a kitchen, a dining room, a living room, maybe a family room, probably a larger hall, maybe a main bedroom, maybe a master bedroom, an ensuite bathroom, maybe a family bathroom, maybe 5 more bedrooms, an attic, maybe a garage, maybe a shed. There will be a lot more areas that are potentially cluttered and need dealing with. Okay, so that will affect how long it takes you to clear the clutter. The second factor that will determine how long it takes you to clear the clutter that has accumulated on your conveyor belt is how much clutter that you've got in each room or area, because again, not everybody has a cluttered hallway, not everybody has a cluttered bathroom, not everyone has a cluttered garage, although interestingly, when people do have a garage with their property, they do tend to have a very cluttered garage, purely because this is a great place for us to move our clutter into when it starts cluttering up, if you like, the visible areas that we actually live in. So the garage and the shed do tend to be the first areas that become very cluttered. I know it was when I had my clutter. The garage became the dumping ground oh, I don't want to look at these things anymore. I don't want to have to decide what to do with them. I'll put them in the garage, out of sight, out of mind. Then it was the attic that became a very useful storage, hiding, denial area. The third thing that's going to affect how long it takes you to clear your clutter is how much of your clutter is large and bulky and how much of it is small, like paperwork. So if you've got, for example, children's toys, which may be larger and bulkier, if you've got lots of empty boxes from things that you've bought, if you have, I don't know, camping equipment, that tends to be big and bulky. Activity type things, so maybe bikes, games for the garden, those are likely to be big and bulky. Whereas the paperwork, like the things we were talking about the other day, like the to-do list, the newspapers, the magazines, the post, the mail, those are what I call small in volume, large in quantity. What do I mean by that? Well, if you buy a ream of paper in a stationery store, it's usually about an inch and a half thick, and each ream of paper will contain 500 pieces of paper. So 500 pieces of paper only take up about an inch and a half when it's compressed and clean paper. Obviously, it will take up a little bit more space once we've printed on it or written on it, just because it naturally loses some of its compactness as we take off each sheet and use it. Now, going through 500 pieces of paper and deciding what to do with each and every one of them, and possibly it's both sides, so that could be 1,000 sides of paper that need to be looked at and decisions made on them. That is going to take quite a long time. And paperwork is one of those things that really frustrates people because it is large in volume, small in quantity. So you can spend a whole clutter clearing session, 2 hours, working on just a small pile of paperwork, and it's not going to have a very impressive visual impact if you've got a room full of clutter, because potentially all that you have reduced the clutter by in a room is just by half an inch or an inch. So paperwork is particularly frustrating. That's why every month I do a dedicated live clutter clearing session purely on paperwork, so that we can all work through it together, share that frustration of potentially checking 1,000 sides of paper during a session. Whereas 1,000 sides of paperwork, if you had 1,000 toys, those would take up a vast amount of space, I imagine. So let's say children's tricycles. If you had 1,000 children's tricycles, they are going to take up considerably more space than 1,000 sides of paper or 500 pieces of paper. So again, the volume and the size and the bulkiness of the things in your clutter is going to affect how quickly you manage to clear it, because making decisions on 3 or 4 tricycles is going to have much more of a visible impact than sorting through 3 pieces of paper. The fourth factor that is going to determine how long it will take you to clear your clutter is how many 2-hour clutter clearing sessions you do each week. Okay, now, as all clutter clearers will know, when they start their journey with me, I do not allow, not that I can stop them, but I do not encourage people to do more than 2 hours of clutter clearing every day. When you are following the clutter clearing process, 2 hours of clutter clearing is actually very productive if you are doing it in the right way. Okay. Now, some people panic when I say no more than 2 hours because, again, we've got this blitz mentality, haven't we? We're used to blitzing and seeing a difference and feeling a difference. We might be absolutely exhausted. We might be mentally exhausted with all the decisions that we're making when we blitz, but at least we can see something is different by the end of the day. And sometimes when we do a 2-hour clutter clearing session, we don't see a massive difference in the clutter in that room. But this is a journey. We are taking our time. We are learning the skill. We are learning and creating the habits. We are changing the old ways because the old ways weren't working. So it's much, much better for us to do a little and often, because not only will that enable us to build that snowball, it will grow, and it will become easier and quicker, but also because we're clearing our clutter in a way which is very different to how we've done it before. The clutter clearing process is very much about learning how to make safe decisions. And to begin with, that is quite tough. When we've blitzed and we've weeded and we've moved and we've piled and we've stored, we've actually managed to pretty much avoid making decisions. So it is mentally tiring, especially in the early days. But as with any exercise, the more we do it, the better we become. We work out that brain muscle and it becomes better and quicker at making the decisions. So again, we just have to trust that process. That 2 hours of clutter clearing may feel very frustrating at the start, but a month down the line, 2 hours of clutter clearing will make a huge difference. When I was clearing my clutter and I spent 2 hours clearing my porch of my house, I found that I didn't actually manage to clear much clutter at all. Like I say, it's because my brain was switching into this new way of decision making rather than just deciding whether to keep or to chuck it. By the time I got to my garage, which was full to the brim, floor to ceiling, wall to wall, by the time I got to clear my garage, I only took 1 day longer to clear it than my porch, i.e. I only took 2 more hours to clear it than my porch, even though there was a fraction of the clutter in my porch compared to the garage. And that was because the decision making by that point was so easy, and it was second nature, and I'd got the habits that I needed by clearing all of the other clutter in my house by then, that I achieved so much more in 2 hours on the garage than I achieved in 2 hours on the porch when I started my journey. Okay, now 2 hours maximum each and every day following a clutter clearing session, but also no more than 5 consecutive days at a time, and then a 2-week break. A 2-day break, sorry. There's a reason why the working week is 5 days and then we get the weekend off, although the reality is we rarely get the weekend off. Saturdays are often domestic days, cleaning, shopping, things like that, and then Sunday really is probably the only day of potential rest if we're not going and doing activities or seeing friends or whatever. But again, we kind of need to do that with our clutter clearing. If you do every single day, then the tiredness will kick in, the mental tiredness, the physical tiredness, the resentment will start to kick in because it's taking over our lives. You may have blitzed your clutter before, and you may have spent many days just going through the clutter, convinced that I'm going to keep going until this is all done. However, I bet that you started to get really annoyed, frustrated, harder to make decisions. Again, when we start to feel that way, that's when the procrastination starts to kick in. That's when we self-sabotage. Then we feel really bad. Then the anxiety starts to kick in again because, oh my goodness, I haven't got this done. And so the cycle begins. Whereas if we work on the basis that we do no more than 5 consecutive days in a row, and then 2 days rest of doing something fun, doing something we enjoy, having a change of focus, we're actually giving our brain a rest. If you've ever been a member of a gym or done exercise, you will know that you can't possibly exercise all day, every day. Exactly the same with our clutter. We need a couple of rest days for our brain and our body to recharge, and we will be much fresher, much more productive when we come back to it a couple of days later. Not that everybody does 5 consecutive days in a row. Again, I would encourage you to do maybe 3 days a week, maybe for example, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, with a day off in between, and then the weekends off as well. But again, that's entirely up to you, and depending on how many of those maximum 5 consecutive days you could do, that will influence how long it takes you to clear your clutter. The more frequently you do them, the more your brain clicks into this new way of thinking and decision making, and therefore the quicker you create that new habit, and the quicker you will be able to clear it. Okay, the 5th factor that will determine how long it takes you to clear your clutter is how much time you set aside each week to clear your to-do list that you will discover amongst your clutter. I am sure that a lot of your clutter contains things that you need to do that haven't been done. So we talked yesterday, didn't we, about the charity things that we may have put in a pile but not actually taken to the charity shop. We may have reading that we planned to do but haven't actually done. We may have, what else, magazines that we intended to read but never actually read. We may have things that were for filing but we never actually filed. Now it may be that you still can't file them because you can't get to the filing cabinet because it is surrounded by clutter and perhaps full of clutter. So there are generally a lot of undone things in people's clutter. That's a very common reason as to why people keep hold of things, because I haven't done this with it yet and I haven't done that with it yet. So there will be almost certainly a to-do list that comes out of your clutter clearing sessions, and that to-do list needs to be worked on in between your clutter clearing sessions. So for example, I mentioned before, didn't I, about a potential option is doing a 2-hour clutter clearing session on a Monday, Wednesday and Friday. Tuesdays may be the day that you work on your to-do list. Okay, so although we may not be doing a physical clutter clearing session on a Tuesday and a Thursday, we're still making time to work on and clear that to-do list, because otherwise those things are just going to sit there and not actually come off the conveyor belt. The 6th thing that will influence how long it takes you to clear your clutter is how many sentimental things you find amongst the clutter, because we deal with sentimental things very differently to general clutter. During the clutter clearing session, we have a category for sentimental items. We essentially park those to the side, but like all of our clutter, we need to make sure that we don't just park them to the side and create a pile. We need to work on that pile. And we have a very careful way of dealing with sentimental items. And again, you may need to make a regular weekly slot of 2 hours to do a sentimental session. So going back to my example, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, maybe doing a 2-hour clutter clearing session on your general clutter. Tuesday may be the day that you set aside 2 hours to work on your clutter clearing to-do list. And Thursday may be the day that you set aside to do your sentimental session each week if you have a lot of sentimental items in your clutter. Okay, so you notice how long it takes is not just about how much clutter you have, it's also about how much time you set aside to actually do the clutter clearing. And of course, protect that time. Hands up who's ever planned their week ahead going, great, I'm going to be really organised, I'm going to do this, this, this and this. Fill their time with things to do and then never actually end up doing half of it. I know I've done that. And again, it's that realisation, that feedback that actually, you know what, that's not realistic. We just need to make sure we protect our time, not answer the phone while we're doing our clutter clearing, not have the TV on while we're doing our clutter clearing, not even answer the front door unless we are particularly expecting someone. So the 7th thing and final thing that is going to determine how long it takes you to clear your clutter is how well you get on with controlling the accumulation area of your conveyor belt. So minimizing the amount of things that come onto the conveyor belt while you are clearing the backlog on the conveyor belt and getting as much as you can off the conveyor belt. Because if we don't control that accumulation, whatever we do at the clutter clearing end is going to be replaced with new clutter. So generally speaking, I encourage people to put in a shopping ban. Only buy what you need. We do have something called the shopping challenge in the clutter community, and we get some great results with people doing the shopping challenge. It does almost naturally create a clutter clearing session on the kitchen and our store cupboards and our freezers and the things that we have in the cupboard. But it's a great way for us to realise that actually, you know what, we don't necessarily need to always buy the same thing in the supermarket every week. Going shopping with cash as well is a very good way of controlling the accumulation area. A bit too easy just to hand over the card, isn't it? And you're not necessarily aware so much of what's in your grocery trolley. So just to summarize, the people who clear their clutter the quickest do 7 things. First, they treat their clutter clearing like a course that they have to attend and make time for every week. And many of them actually tell their friends and family that on a particular day, every week, they're going to be doing an online course. Okay, so that explains why they're still in their home and haven't left the house. For most of my clients, that's absolutely true, because I give 90% of the help with my clients either live through live video links as I take them through a clutter clearing session online, or I talk to them using Skype, which is a free online telephone service. So again, we're not lying, we're just saying to people we're doing an online course. And therefore I'm not going to be contactable on a Monday, a Wednesday and a Friday morning or afternoon. The second thing that my clients who clear their clutter the quickest, the second thing that they have is that they're very patient and they're prepared to commit to doing at least 2 clutter clearing sessions each and every week, and 1 session a week doing their to-do list. Okay, and they're very good at protecting that time that they set aside, not letting other people sabotage it, not letting themselves sabotage it by answering the phone, answering the door, watching the telly. The third thing that my most successful clients who clear their clutter the quickest have is that they've got an open mind to trying a different method to make decisions on their clutter and clear it. Usually when people start their clutter clearing journey, it feels very strange, it feels uncomfortable, it's outside their comfort zone, but they stick with it and they have an open mind, and then they kind of get to that point where they can see and feel a difference, and that helps with their motivation. But in that initial stages, they feel the fear and do it anyway. The fourth thing that enables my clients to clear their clutter the quickest is that they're ready to change their habits so that they never have to clear this amount of clutter again. If we're going to clear our clutter in a meaningful way, it's going to require changing our habits, and that's hard. The older you get, the harder it is to change and to change habits. But again, my clients who clear their clutter the quickest are ready to do that. The fifth factor that enables my clients to clear their clutter the quickest is they get control of their accumulation area of the conveyor belt before they even start looking at the clutter clearing end of their conveyor belt. They know and understand from talking to me just how important this end is. Even those people who think that they don't have an issue with their accumulation end discover that they do. The sixth factor that enables people to clear their clutter the quickest is that they trust the process. Even though it may not make sense when they start, even though it doesn't get them the results as quickly as they probably want it to. But they trust the process, and I like to think that they trust me as well. And the seventh and final thing that enables my clients to clear their clutter the quickest is that they're getting accountability to doing those clutter clearing sessions each and every week, and they get the support that they need to clear it. That might be by joining the live clutter clearing sessions in the Clutter community with me and other Clutter community members. We do it all together online. We should share our successes and challenges, and I can give advice live in real time. They may join the Clutter community to join the weekly live sessions. They may join a Clutter buddy group online or in person. That's where a small group of us, no more than 4 people, meet every week so that we can talk about our challenges, share our successes, again, get my advice one-to-one. We can see and hear each other, and we can set ourselves some goals to achieve by the following week. So again, that accountability to clear the to-do list, to do a sentimental clutter clearing session before we regroup the following week. And then some people have decided to commit to coming to me every week. Those who can travel to Banbury in Oxfordshire are going to be coming to my home each and every week on a Wednesday to join the Clutter Club. We are going to group round my dining room table, and we are literally going to go through the clutter together. They're going to be able to leave some of the clutter behind. So the bits that need to go to charity will stay with me. The bits that need to be shredded or recycled will stay with me. So they will literally be taking home less clutter. For some people, physically getting away from the clutter will make a big difference and will enable them to clear their clutter quicker than if they were at home. So I know that doesn't really answer the question of how long will it take me to clear my clutter. As you can see, there are many factors that are involved, as there is with any change that we want in our lives. But the really important thing to know is that all of these things can be achieved. Anyone can clear their clutter. If you take into account that when I work with a hoarder, so a hoarder is somebody who has literally got clutter absolutely everywhere, is rarely sleeping in their bed because there is clutter on the bed. So very often they're sleeping in a chair because there is so much clutter in their home. These are the people that you see on the TV programs. When I work with a hoarder, initially, I only work with them for 3 hours a week. But then we build that up so that we are eventually working 3 times a week for 3 hours, doing a 2-hour clutter clearing session together. I work with them on average for a year. So even if you are a hoarder, then you can clear your clutter realistically in a year. That's if you have a 3-bedroomed house. So again, depending on how big your home is and how much clutter you have, gauge it from there. That's if you make the time, make the commitment, get the accountability, and simply do the doing. I hope that helps in terms of allaying your concerns about how long it will take. I will see you same time, same place tomorrow for the next video in this series.